And so the hormone at the center of this story is one that people never actually associate with the menstrual cycle. What is it? It's insulin. And so today we are speaking all about blood sugar and why insulin stability is actually one of the foundations of hormonal health. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to this week's episode of the Her Daily Rhythm podcast. I'm Natalie Smyth, your host, who is a naturopath, nutritionist, and meditation teacher. And I'm guiding you on this journey with our partner, FemVed, who are on a mission to democratize women's health through Ayurveda, Western medical standards, naturopathy, and all the things to support you in your individual health journey. So this is a solocast episode with me. I'm going over the foundations of the hormonal hierarchy to understand your hormones. Because when you are proactive and empowered by your health, you know how your body is communicating. You know how to advocate for yourself, for your friends, for your community, and if you're a mother, your children. Last week we spoke about the first part of the hormonal hierarchy, which is the adrenal system. So the survival chemistry that when dysregulated, dismantles everything built upon it. So this week we're moving up on our hormonal hierarchy. But before I tell you what hormone we're speaking about, let me describe a pattern that I'm going to give you a clue about that I'm seeing too much in clinic. So a woman comes to me, she's gone to the GP, her blood work is normal, but something is not normal because she feels exhausted after lunch, she feels exhausted after she's woken, even with 7 to 8 hours sleep. The week before her period, she craves sugar almost compulsively. Her mood dips in the second half of her cycle, though she doesn't realize she has PMS only because her partner tells her that she's turned into a dragon. And sometimes she notices maybe some breakouts or acne along her jawline that seem to come out of nowhere. These symptoms often are treated completely separate problems, but very often they're actually part of the same physiological story. And so the hormone at the center of this story is one that people never actually associate with the menstrual cycle. What is it? It's insulin. And so today we are speaking all about blood sugar and why insulin stability is actually one of the foundations of hormonal health. So, how insulin works. I'm going to explain the science to you in a really cohesive way so you can understand how your body is communicating. So what happens? Every time you eat, glucose from your food enters your bloodstream. So your pancreas releases insulin, which is like a key, allowing that glucose to move into your cells where it can be used for energy. This is completely normal and a necessary part of metabolism, but the system works best when glucose rises gradually and predictably. So when blood sugar spikes rapidly from highly refined carbohydrates, food on the run, chronic stress, or sleep disruption, the pancreas has to release larger amounts of insulin to manage it. So over time, the cells begin responding less efficiently to insulin's signal. This is what we call insulin resistance. This can begin long before fasting glucose tests appear abnormal, which means many women are experiencing insulin dysregulation while being told that their blood tests are normal. So there's another piece of this story that us women don't know about because, as you know, our bodies and cycles have only recently been emerging in the latest literature. So this explains why you'll start to notice a puzzle that this appears every month. Why your cravings, particularly carbohydrates, i.e. chocolate, sugar, often become much stronger in the week before your period. The menstrual cycle insulin shift. Insulin sensitivity actually changes across your menstrual cycle, across your 28 days. It's not the same for men, I know. During the first half of your cycle, the follicular stage, when estrogen is rising, during this time, the body tends to be more insulin sensitive. So glucose is used efficiently for energy. This is why you feel clearer, more stable, and more productive during this phase. So after ovulation, progesterone becomes the dominant hormone. And so progesterone naturally reduces insulin sensitivity slightly. This means that your cells respond less efficiently to estrogen and your body often asks for slightly more energy, particularly carbohydrates. So for many women, this is exactly why cravings increase. So suddenly those premenstrual sugar cravings look less like a willpower problem and more like physiology that you're able to understand and manage. Insulin and the reproductive hormones. So when insulin remains elevated for longer periods of time, it also sends a signal to your ovaries. And specifically, it can stimulate the ovaries to produce more androgens, including testosterone. And so this is one of the mechanisms behind hormonal patterns like PCOS, but it doesn't only affect women with this formal diagnosis. Even moderately elevated insulin can interfere with ovulation, worsening acne along the jaw and chin, and amplify PMS symptoms. And insulin doesn't operate alone. It is in constant conversation with another hormone we discussed in the previous episode. What is it? Cortisol, which means stress can destabilize your blood sugar even in a relatively balanced diet. So when cortisol rises, blood sugar rises with it. This is intentional because in a stress response, the body releases glucose into the bloodstream so that energy is immediately available, right? Fly from the tiger. Insulin is then released to bring that glucose into your cells. But when this happens repeatedly through chronic stress, sleep deprivation or irregular eating, sedentary lifestyle, heavy exposure to environmental toxins, the system begins to lose. Stress raises blood sugar raises insulin. Elevated insulin contributes to inflammation, and inflammation signals to the body that something is wrong. And that drives cortisol higher again. This is why addressing stress physiology is so foundational. You cannot fully stabilize blood sugar in a body that never receives the signal that it is safe to do so in stress mode. So what happens in reactive hypoglycaemia? This is another pattern that I see regularly in clinic. I actually used to suffer from it. It's called reactive hypoglycemia. So this is when blood sugar drops low between meals, often after an earlier spike. So having coffee first thing or like a pastry with no protein or anything like that, your body is going to continually crave that quick energy. And so what happens when that drop happens, the body releases cortisol and adrenaline to push glucose back into the bloodstream. So women come to me and describe this pattern as a cluster of symptoms. So sudden anxiety without an obvious trigger, irritability before meals, that mid-afternoon crash, and a feeling of urgently needing sugar to function or energy to function or a pick-me-up. These experiences are often interpreted as stress or emotional instability, but very often they are simply a blood sugar signal. So it's not all doom and gloom. The encouraging part of this is that this is just your biology and how it responds. So since it is step 2 of our hormonal hierarchy, of our hormonal cascade, there's so much we can do about it, right? Blood sugar is one of the most responsive systems in the body. And so small changes can create surprisingly notable shifts in energy, cravings, and even your cycle symptoms. So imagine how life would be. So if you took only 4 ideas from this episode, these are the ones I'd want to carry with you. The 4 foundations. First, I'm sure you've heard about it all over TikTok or social media right now. It's start with protein in your meals. Protein and fat slow glucose and dramatically reduce the blood sugar from carbohydrates. This doesn't mean removing carbohydrate. It just simply means changing the order, right? So protein first, carbohydrates later, fruit and protein together. So for example, if you're having an apple or banana, pair it with some nuts or seeds for that sustained energy. Number 2, walk after meals. So simple. Even if you work in an office, you can do this for 10 or 5 minutes. A 10-minute walk after eating allows your muscles to use glucose immediately for energy, right? The basic physiology of the human form. Run from the tiger, use your muscles, you have energy, right? It's one of the simplest and most effective blood sugar stabilizers there is. On that note, there's been so much literature recently about our muscle tissue is one of the body's most powerful regulators of blood glucose. So when your muscles contract during resistance training, they can absorb glucose without needing insulin. So this means even a short strength session dramatically improves glucose disposal. And so for women that persistently struggle with blood sugar swings, resistance training 2 or 3 times a week can be dramatically transformative. Number 3. Eat at regular times. This is not including if you are fasting, which we've spoken about in previous episodes. Your hormonal system operates in rhythm. So when meals become chaotic, skipping breakfast, long food without gaps, eating on the run, blood sugar stability becomes harder to maintain. And so consistency supports metabolic rhythm. And number 4, protect your sleep. I know it sounds so boring, especially if you live in a really exciting international city. You have so many things going on. But sleep is numero uno. I always speak about this. Every single night of poor sleep can significantly reduce insulin sensitivity in healthy adults, meaning that you will just be a cookie monster the next day. So in the luteal phase, when insulin sensitivity is already slightly lower, sleep becomes especially critical. So before you do anything, make sure you have those foundations down in lock and key. And for women who continue to struggle with blood sugar instability, I think the modern lifestyle, we all are a little bit like that. There are also several nutrients with strong research support. So if you're having a one-to-one consultation, there's a plethora of nutrients that we can utilize specifically for you individually, but that's based on your complete biology. So always check with your practitioner that you're working with. But a couple of nutrients that we're seeing some really exciting things in the literature, I'm going to name just a few. So we have inositol. So inositol has shown significant benefits for insulin sensitivity and ovulatory function in women with PCOS. It acts as a secondary messenger for insulin signaling in the ovaries. This is pretty exciting. So improving how the ovaries respond to insulin and reducing the androgen overproduction that comes with insulin resistance. So brands, I really like Zeta West and Thorne are some really nice ones. But again, check with your practitioner. Number 2, cinnamon. Use cinnamon, use spices in your food. Make sure it's Ceylon cinnamon. Cinnamon improves insulin receptor sensitivity and may help with those glucose spikes. So around 1 to 2 grams daily with meals. Sprinkle it in your smoothie, your porridge, have it in your tea. It's a really warming therapeutic spice. Chromium. Now chromium. Chromium supports insulin signaling. Chromium is a really interesting one. It supports insulin signaling and can reduce carbohydrate cravings driven by sugar instability. So the clinical evidence here is really strong for reducing carbohydrate cravings in that luteal phase. So what that does, it improves fasting blood glucose. So 200 to 400 micrograms of chromium piccolate daily is the standard functional medicine range. Food sources are broccoli and green beans, but with soil deficiency means that dietary sources are frequently insufficient. So Thorne and Wild Nutrition both carry well-absorbed forms here. Now, certain bacteria are strongly associated with better glucose regulation. One that appears frequently in the research literature is Akkermansia musciphiella. I'm sorry I pronounced that so badly. So there's been some really exciting studies here and how that is improved with metabolic function and lowers inflammation. And in cases of significant insulin resistance, the plant compound called berberine has been studied for its ability to activate metabolic pathways similar to those targeted by metformin. So they're really good tools and nutrients to discuss with your practitioner if blood sugar dysregulation is a constant problem based on all of those symptoms that we've just discussed today. So before we close, I invite you always, because her daily rhythm is all about systems thinking, realizing how one system, one symptom impacts the other, and how you are the microcosm as part of the macrocosm, and everything is interrelated and affects each other. So remember, everything that we eat, every symptom that we receive, every stress that we have has a direct correlation. So get curious. This work is about being your inner health detective. So notice your energy patterns across the day, like check in with yourself. And at the end of the day, do your energy levels feel stable? Or do they feel like a roller coaster? Do you constantly rely on substances and pick-me-ups? Do you crash mid-afternoon? Do you feel noticeably irritable, anxious before meals? And what happens to your sleep, energy, and cravings before your period? Your body is communicating with you. Get curious. You are going to be living with your body for the rest of your years. Your body is your true home in this life, so get curious. So your reset this week, your takeaways, your homework, please get the foundations right. Eat protein within the first hour of waking, before your coffee if you can manage it. Otherwise, put some collagen or protein in your coffee. Even a few bites of nuts, a boiled egg, nut butter, collagen powder. 2, add Ceylon cinnamon to your morning. So on your porridge, in a smoothie, or stirred into warm water with a little bit of honey or ginger or lemon. Notice your sleep in the luteal phase of your cycle, so track it. See whether your energy and crash shift with your sleep quality. And if you're curious about your personal glucose response, consider looking into a continuous glucose monitor. You can find them on Amazon. They're just a small device that you put on your arm. See what the data says for 2 weeks. It's really insightful, really interesting because it raises, and then you'll be able to understand your stress response too. So last week we spoke about the adrenals, the survival layer of the hormonal hierarchy. Today we explored insulin, the metabolic layer. And so next week we move to phase 3, the thyroid. So this is the metabolic engine that determines how quickly every cell in your body uses that energy, because you can't build stable hormones on an unstable metabolic function. My name's Natalie Smyth of the Her Daily Rhythm podcast. Please like, subscribe, share this with somebody. Learn your body because it impacts the greater world at large. When we know ourselves, when we know thyself, that's when we can help other people. That's when we have more energy to radiate. That's when we have more resilience. Until next time, nourish your foundations. Your hormones are listening.